So hey Tom, how you doing? It's been a while since we've caught up.
It has been a while. It's been too long, actually, I think. Uh, we do well together.
Yeah, but well,
If
plus
nothing
I'm
else,
in.
we have a lot of fun together.
That's always true. Well, plus I'm in the Kootenays now. I moved away from Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows area. I was there for
Hmm.
20 years, and I'll tell you, it was pretty emotional leaving that place.
I'm sure it was.
Very emotional. It was I still think about. Well, I'll be thinking about them every day for the rest of my life. Obviously, that
Hmm.
particular group. RE and Little Bud and
Yeah,
Porshna and
Raj.
Raj, and
Yeah.
they're a special gang for sure. But
Well, just look at the background on my picture.
yeah, your head's covering up the main guys, but
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
There we go.
Oh, I'm not even in there. Okay, I take that comment back.
You t- you took that picture.
Yeah,
You
obviously.
took
Yeah,
you. Hmm.
obviously. So yeah, I remember that time. That's when we found a few things.
Hmm.
Okay, so I got somebody. Did you hear a little beep?
No.
Oh, okay, because I get people messaging me. They never message me unless I'm doing a recording, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So let me just tell this guy to I'm recording and not to message me.
Hmm.
Okay, there we go. All righty. So yeah, we've been up here for just over a week. Now, I guess it was a week on not this last Monday, but the previous Monday. So maybe 10 days or something we've been up here.
Hmm.
And already had a few experiences, but yesterday's was extremely interesting. And I didn't know what to make of it at first, and then when I started thinking about it, it had to involve the Sasquatch in some way.
Hmm.
So as you know, we're having a heat wave up here.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what's it like down your way. Hot.
It's been hot. Yeah. Hmm.
So we're hovering around anywhere between the high 90s to like 105 or something.
Wow.
And it's not on the coast either, so it's quite. we're 700 and some odd kilometers off of the coast now, so
Right.
it's uh it's a little bit different kind of heat. But anyway, so I was in my dining room yesterday, which seems strange to say, to actually be a homeowner again. It seems like weird, but in my dining room, and I'm looking
Uh-huh.
out the window, and it's been dry as can be for the last since we've been up here. Not a hint of rain, and I don't see any rain
Hmm.
coming in anytime soon. So I'm looking out the window and at a big tree in front of the house, and it looks like it's pouring out. And I'm thinking, what in the heck? It reminded me exactly of rain.
Hmm.
So I went outside and I didn't see anything. Then I got this strange call, and it kind of sounded like a bird, except it was like at least 10 times louder than anything I've ever heard. It was like extremely loud, like wow, was it loud?
Hmm.
Like I don't think a bird could have that volume, put it that way. And
Right.
it did it about 5 times. The rain has stopped or whatever was falling out of the tree. Maybe whatever was making the call was in the tree, or I don't know. Or how they can project any kind of thought or
Sure.
experience they want at you. So whatever, that's how it appeared, but things aren't always as they appear with them. So we know that. But anyway, it was crazy loud, and I thought, well, we got a turkey running around here, a wild turkey called Janet. So
Hmm.
you've seen Janet.
Yeah.
So I started, looking up turkey calls. It definitely wasn't a turkey. And like I said, the volume was way too loud. There's no bird that's got those kind of lungs.
Hmm.
And the other interesting thing is that a couple times interspersed with the calls was a really loud raven call. So,
Hmm.
so I'm thinking, okay, that's a little bit of a introduction or something from the locals up here, but
Yeah,
I can't chalk it up to anything else because there's no birds that have that kind of lung power, right?
yeah, 500-pound bird.
Yeah, you know, when they say a 500-pound owl or
Yeah,
something like that, that's exactly what I experienced, except this one
yeah,
was right on top of me, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. Just letting you
So
know they were there.
yeah, so that's really interesting. That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess things are slowly progressing, and I guess the local town will make their, you know, their appearance slowly over time or whatever. I think maybe I'll start reading my book out in the woods, and that ought to
There
bring
you
them
go.
in. That ought to bring them in.
Yep.
They seem to like when you write about them and talk about them, as you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. They
Mhm.
just like you to sit out there and be with them, even if they aren't talking to you.
Yeah,
Uh, they just like you to be around them. Uh, yeah, they
yeah.
get curious, and especially the young ones are first. They're always the first ones in. But then who
Yeah.
gets in more trouble than any species than adolescent males?
That's for sure. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Um, you know, and I related the experience to Kevin Royce, you know, my friend, and
Mm,
he said he was pretty sure it was the Sasquatch because he had the exact same kind of experience. And so,
mm,
and you know, I knew it had to be something different than just a bird. It was just way too
yeah.
loud, and they
Kevin comes
don't
down.
they're not very subtle at times, are they? You know,
No,
if they
they are
want, if
about
they,
subtle as a brick.
but they can be really subtle.
They can be.
If they're leading you along the breadcrumb trail of glyphs
Uh,
and teachings and stuff, that's
yeah,
when they are subtle and when you have to pay attention very
yeah.
closely. But
But
if
when
they want to get in, yeah,
they try
if
to
they
get
want
in your attention, it's bonk.
right over the head, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah.
that was kind
Mm,
of cool. So we're going to get into your proof of Sasquatch presentation, but I thought before we got into that, just for a few minutes, why don't you talk about the new book that you've got
oh,
coming out?
yeah. I've what I did. This book has been in publication and been out of publication now for about 30 years, and it's the
Put it in front of your face because otherwise it won't show up.
okay, right in front of my face. There we
Yeah.
go. Bigfoot of the Blues was written by Vance Orchard, and Vance was a outdoor reporter for the Walla Walla, Washington Union Bulletin newspaper for 30 some years. Then he moved a few miles north to Waitsburg and was editor of the Waitsburg Times before he retired. And he's gone now, and his children are gone now. And he wrote this book back in 1992, uh, published it in 93. And it's a chronicle, basically, of the Sasquatch research and activities in the Blue Mountains around Walla Walla for the decade between about 1992. It culminates with the pardon me, the Paul Freeman video. Paul was a good friend of Vance and knew him well, and so it's the view from the inside. And what Vance did is he's compiled all of his newspaper articles for that decade on Sasquatch and on the research. And I felt this book was much too important not to be available. So what I did is I researched it, tried to find uh, descendants of Vance, and the publisher that did it is out of business, and the it's just their copyright expired, and so I republished it, and with the idea that if there somebody does come forward and has a claim on it, we'll just talk about it. But uh, what I wanted to do was to get this book back in publication just because it's so important. And it gives such an insight into the research process and into the anti-research process as well. The naysayers, the skeptics, and such like that. And start with let me just read you a little chapter 1. Just
Okay.
and it starts out, I know what I saw, and I'm not going to change because that's what I saw. Paul Freeman, the Mill Creek Watershed Patrol Rider, who claims to have seen a huge, hairy man-like creature on his rounds Thursday, said the creature was unlike anything he had seen in a lifetime of woods experience. Now, that's from a newspaper article that Vance wrote.
Yeah.
And that was the 1982 sighting that Paul Freeman had of a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Paul was a writer for the U.S. Forest Service in the watershed for the city of Walla Walla. It's this huge area of Mill Creek watershed, and since that's where Walla Walla City gets its water, they kind of don't want people in there, messing it up. So Paul was an employee of the Forest Service, but his job was to keep people and cattle out of that watershed. So he was writing by himself every day in that watershed. And this chronicles the things that he saw. His friend Wes Summerlin, Wes was a tracker and a guide in the Blue Mountains. Expert tracker, just absolutely fantastic tracker, and a great guy. And it just chronicles what they went through, and I think people just would really enjoy that book. And you can
Yeah.
get it off my website. My website is just thomcantrall.com, just my name, and make sure you get the H in Tom. And yeah. I tell people my mother named me Thomas, and over my 80 years, I just kind of worn my ass off and it just leaves Tom.
Yeah, yeah.
Another couple of years, I may be down to Tho.
or just tea.
Yeah, yes, it's just tea. I don't know if I'll live long enough to get down to tea, but that's all right. That's all right. But at any rate, you can get it there or you can get it on Amazon. I prefer you get it from me because that way I get to sign it. And I found out early on in writing books, that's the real joy in writing is getting to sign the book. That's why I
Yeah,
don't like Kindle. And people get really upset at you if you sign their Kindle screen.
yeah. Well, when I put my book out, the Kindle version, I think it's okay now, I think. But it
Mhm.
it, it was just like,
Oh,
it's
it's terrible.
horrible.
It's
It's
hard. It's
horrible.
hard getting it straight on Kindle. It's more work getting it straight on Kindle than it is in publishing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got pretty frustrated. I paid a couple $1,000s or close to it to these guys, and they kept
Hmm.
screwing it up. And then I just went back to what I originally did, and I
Hmm.
looked at it, and there were a couple little mistakes, but other than that, it was pretty good, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but anyway, uh,
Anyway, yeah.
so I just
But
wanted to ask you with. Oh, sorry. Did you have another?
no, that's all right. Mhm.
I wanted to ask you. So with Paul Freeman, like I know your experiences, you were getting all kinds of subtle little hints until you
Mhm.
finally saw one or until you finally knew, oh, okay, this
Right.
is what I'm experiencing, looking at. So was
Right.
when Paul had his sighting that you described in the newspaper article, was he already aware of them at that point?
No, he was a denier until that 1982 sighting. He just kind of laughed at it. But when he had it face to face, that all changed. And I've noticed that happens a lot with people. most most ardent skeptic, when they go face to face with one, change their attitude really quickly. And although I've seen some, and that was a bear I saw. That had to be a bear I saw.
Yeah.
And then there's Jackie's story. Uh, Back in 2014, we were camped in Northern California in the Bluff Creek area at a place called Elk Meadows. And we spent 2 weeks there. And you're at that time. And we were coming back from town. And Jackie Tonks, who had come over from England for this outing, was in the passenger seat. Arla, our good friend and ma and sister, was in the back seat. And I was driving. We came around a curve at milepost 14, and there were two Sasquatch standing right in the middle of the road. I mean, well, they were about 2/3 of the way across the road. And by the time I got stopped, they were about 20 feet in front of us. They turned and went back 2 steps, and they were over the bank. Okay. The first thing Jackie did when we saw him was to yell out as loud as she could, "Bigfoot!" But did my ears out, almost blew the windshield out on the car. In the 20 miles from where we saw them back to our camp, her mind convinced her she had not seen two Sasquatch in the road. She had seen two Mexican drug mules wearing long-haired ghillie suits and flip-flops and a backpack on. Yeah, her mind didn't know what a Sasquatch was, but it knew what a drug mule was. It didn't know what Osman pads were on the feet, but it knew what flip-flops were. And it didn't know what, that hump of the back, but it knew what a rucksack was. And it just convinced her that she had not seen Sasquatch. She'd just seen the drug mules. And it was 3 or 4 days later that Arla finally said, "Jackie, you've traveled 6,000 miles to be where you are. And now your mind's not letting you see what you saw."
Yeah.
And Jackie got thinking about that. And by the time by the time we got back to Eugene, Oregon, and had lunch with Sue there, she had understood what her mind had done and realized that she had seen Sasquatch and that they really were. So she did come around, but that was so interesting to watch how her mind did that. Just backed away entirely from what she'd seen to convince her that she hadn't seen that at all.
So how close were they? How close were they when they passed on the road in front of the
20
car?
feet, they were within 20 feet of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty compelling.
Because I was pushing hard trying to get back. I cut my teeth driving logging roads, and so I was pushing pretty hard to get back, and they had to be there because they wanted to be seen, because I was making a lot of noise driving. I mean, my engine, I was, coming out of the curves in full acceleration and then braking going into the next one, went as fast as I could on a logging road. And and it was a paved logging road. U.S. Forest Service spends a lot of money paving roads and creating very unsafe conditions, more unsafe than a gravel road. And but this was an old one, and so I was having a great time driving it.
Yeah.
But she just unbelievable. And like I say, Arla was there too. She got to witness this. You can ask her about that situation. It was fantastic to watch.
Yeah.
Well,
as you
come around.
As we know, I should say, usually when they're seen, it's, they want you to see them. And sometimes it's the beginning of an introduction.
That's right.
That may not come to fruition until like decades later or whatever, but
right. Yeah, you never know, do you?
No. So let's get into your presentation. What's it called? And you can start at the very beginning. And I apologize to people.
What I want.
Hang on a second. First of all, I apologize to anybody watching. Zoom has completely changed their format. So I've got no idea how to load pictures and whatever now. And so we're just going to have to describe what Tom's talking about, and we'll discuss it as he's describing it. But I think it'll be really good anyway. So
I think we can handle it. Yeah. We've
So
done this a time or two before anyway.
Well, we always, if we don't know what we're talking about, we'll always make something up. No, of course,
Oh,
I'm joking.
thanks.
I'm just joking, of course.
I'd start out by letting you know that everything that's in that we're talking about today is in this book, Sasquatch the Proof. Okay, and that's available same as the other book through my website or through Amazon. It's also available on Kindle. So
Awesome.
you can find out what we're talking about here. But what we're going to talk about and what we're going to end up doing is supplying measurable, reproducible, scientific proof of not only the Patterson Gimlin film, but of Sasquatch themselves.
Yeah.
When we get done, I'll give you a method of telling a real picture from a fake. If you can see an arm and a leg, if you can see both an arm and a leg in it,
Yeah.
you can tell whether a picture's a fake or not instantaneously. Well, a little work, but we're going to start out with scientific proof of the Patterson through the testimony of experts, and we're going to see what the people in the costuming world had to say. But as you remember, on the 20th of October in 1967, two cowboys from Yakima rode out of obscurity and into destiny when they happened on a strange being and recorded a 1-minute film that has sparked over 50 years now of controversy. And that's a controversy that has been argued ad infinitum, ad nauseum, to no end. But it's something that didn't need to be. If people would listen to the experts and not to what their brother-in-law said, it was there. Okay.
Yeah.
And I keep telling people, I don't care what your brother-in-law said. I've got a brother-in-law too, and he's an idiot. So, what's your point? If you're going to argue with me, if you're going to if you're going to argue with me, you got to have facts. Okay, you've got to have references for what you're arguing. And so here's the point. Dr. Andrew Nelson, from the Center of Motion Analysis of Biomedics, stated, there are aspects that cannot be created in a suit. After analyzing the biomechanical issues, I find that it is very hard to believe that someone in 1967 could have fabricated the intricacies as evidenced in the soft tissue irregularities of the leg. The science at that time was just too primitive. That's a professor. That's a person that headed a lab for motion analysis.
Yeah. That alone is a powerful statement. Just that alone.
Absolutely. If you went no further than that, that's powerful. But we do go further than that. John Chambers won the Academy Award in 1968 for a movie called The Planet of the Apes. You may have heard of that movie. Okay. To create the figures in that movie took a team of 4 over 6 months to make those suits. It took 4 hours every day to apply those suits. And he said that suit in that film is the finest ever devised because it was beyond our capabilities in the 1960s. Every hair would have had to have been individually attached to the model for it to do what it does in that film.
Yeah, and I don't think Bob and Roger had the know-how to do that. Obviously.
No, Bob's a great guy. I love him to pieces. He's one of my best friends in the world. But no, he was not a costume maker, not at all. But there again, that's a testimony of an expert.
Yeah.
Somebody that won the Academy Award for his work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Jeff Meldrum, we all know Jeff, talking about ratios. Your height is 6.5 times the length of your foot. The size of the tracks of the paddy figure were 14.5 inches. How do we know that? It was independently measured by 4 different people. John Green, you and I met John Green before his passing.
Yeah.
Newspaperman from BC.
Really, really, a really important guy.
Yeah,
nice for documenting stories. Yeah.
Right. Bob Titmus from Redding, California, is a taxidermist. Al Hodgson from Willow Creek, who ran the store there. And Renee DeHenden, kind of a character, but a businessman up in Canada as well.
Yeah. I met him too.
Of whom,
I met him as well.
Did you? I never did meet him. Bob has some great stories about him, though. Bob Gimlet, he does. He has some great stories about Renee. All of them saw and measured the tracks, and they said they were 14.5 inches long. So if we applied Dr. Jeff Meldrum's ratio to that, that means that figure in the film was a height of 7 foot 10 inches tall. Want to show me a 7 foot 10 inch person?
Very few.
Yeah, I don't know that there's ever been one. Maybe one. Even
there's been a few, but I mean, you know, one in billions.
Yeah, it really.
But that one in the billion was not the guy running around in a monkey suit. That's for sure. Right.
Bill Munns ran the school for costume making. He did costumes like Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, the guy was absolute expert on costumes. And we'll have some more from him in a little bit. But he said by using the lens and camera data, knowing what, the focal length on the lens was, and how far you were from the subject to the lens, the subject was between 8 foot tall. I don't care what your brother-in-law says, that's what the experts do. Now, I did one other, that in frame 72, she's walking away, and the foot is up flat. You take the measurement of that foot, and it's 14.5 inches, and go up the whole body, step by step, she comes out to 7'4" to 7'6" tall. So you have to compensate for the hump because she's bent over. So that's why the variation's there. Okay. Ruben Steindorf, senior animator at Vision Realm Inc. Think you might know something about these things? Using an inverse kinematric system of motion analysis, created a 3D model of the creature, which he forwarded to Andrew Nelson at the Center for Motion Dynamics, who created a skeleton in the model. Dr. Andrew Nelson determined graphically that the creature walked with a compliant gait. We humans we pole vault over our knees. We land with a very heavy heel strike. Okay. And then come down on our foot. Their foot, when they lift it, swings out to the side and comes down directly in front of the trailing foot, flat. So when they step with our pole vault, our heaviest strike is our heel. So that's going to be the deepest part of the print. Mm-hmm. When they step down, they're flat. So their entire weight is distributed over the entire size of their foot, about 90 to 100 square inches. When they come forward, then they come up, they have a mid-tarsal break in their foot. And it breaks just like your hand would break like that. Okay. Yeah. When they come up, that puts the weight all on the front half of the foot, so it sinks deeper. So in their track, the front half is deeper than the back half. So if you
Yeah.
look at a track, if the front half isn't deeper than the back half, unless there could be a media problem there, that the ground is harder where the front half of the foot is, this may not be true. So 1 in 1,000 maybe wouldn't be true for it. But with them, the front half of the foot sinks deeper than the back half. With us, the back half is deeper than the front half.
And
Easy to look.
that would be probably why in so many of the legitimate Sasquatch tracks, you see the toes quite prominently.
Yes, absolutely. And their toes are almost prehensile. They're almost like used like our fingers. Okay. And one of the problems, people that would make tracks using fake feet, the first thing they encounter is when they put on their fake feet, they don't leave tracks.
Yeah.
Why? They just took 20 square inches of foot that we have, or 15, 20, and made it to 95 or 100. And so that what's your pound per square inch, it drops it from, from 4 or 5 or 6 down to 1.
Well, I think a good example of that would be snowshoes.
Exactly. That's exactly the effect you're getting the snowshoes. Okay. So therein lies a great rub. Autumn Williams used to have a program on TV. Can't remember, something about the wild, in the wild. At any rate, she was investigating Sasquatch, and she took a group of people out, and this one dude, it was from New York. He was going to prove that they were fake. The resident skeptic, all these shows have to have a resident skeptic on them.
Yeah.
And so he put on fake feet, and he was shocked. He couldn't even see his own tracks. And that's why. That's exactly why.
What did
Um,
he just for interest sake, did he kind of back away from his
yeah,
stand after that?
he had to sit down and figure out what had happened, and he realized it's not as easy to make fake tracks as what you think it is. You'd have to scoop out each one individually. You
Yeah.
can't just put the feet on. Also, making fake tracks, Patty's length between steps where the feet hit was between 42 and 51 inches. I have a rope that I've made that I put her average step on. I marked it every
Yeah.
48 inches, and I'd string it out and let people try to walk that. And it's a real trip watching people. Even if you have somebody with long enough legs to hit the 4 feet mark, his head is going up and down so much. And if you watch her head, it never moves. It's just flat and level the whole time. Okay. Then have them do the look back. Almost invariably, they'll fall over doing that.
Yeah. 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 It's, I mean, when people do that, they're kind of almost jumping or stretching right out. Patty's
Absolutely.
walk is
They
very,
have
very,
to.
it's very fluid.
You've watched people try to walk that rope.
If you watch Patty in the film, it's very, very fluid. It's obviously, just a natural walk for her.
Actually, also Dr. Scott Lind, also an Emmy Award winning animator, and Joe Russo attempted to train an athlete to walk with that same compliant gait, and they couldn't do it. Even an athlete could not walk that gait. And these professional men concluded that it was impossible for the human to exactly duplicate the walking motion exhibited by the creature in that film.
Yeah.
And there again, my brother-in-law says, Peter Brook of the Jim Henson Creature Shop, and I think they probably know a bit about costumes, don't you imagine?
Yeah.
John Chambers, Academy Award winner for Planet of the Apes, like I say, his efforts took 4 professional designers 3 months to create, performed an analysis of the creature in that film. They concluded that there were 3 notable features in that film: arm length, the musculature beneath the skin, and that the hair adheres to the body. Peter Brooks stated such costumes did not exist in the 1960s. The fur and hair conform to the contour of the body. Today, we make such costumes from 4-way stretch fur fabrics, but that did not exist until the 1980s. The era of that film did not have such fabrics.
Yeah, well, I don't think they could even reproduce it today, let alone
No,
get a human being to fit into that.
no, there's reproductions out there that, and they all lack what we're going to get into in a minute.
Yeah.
Number one, their head sits up on a pedestal, and when they want to look back, they just turn and look over their shoulder. Okay. Patty's head didn't. When she turns, her chin hits her shoulder. Therefore, in order to look back, she has to open her body. That's why that turn in frame 354. Okay. Because she has the same 7 vertebrae in her neck we have, but giraffes have the same 7 vertebrae we have, just a slightly different sequence of size involved there between a giraffe and us and Patty. Okay. John Chambers said that suit did not stretch. And I don't know how they. Several individual muscle groups are plainly visible on the creature in the film, and the tightening and slacking of the Achilles tendon is evident. How are you going to do that in a suit?
Yeah.
Bill Munn says you cannot alter where the knees and elbows bend. And this is the most important part. Our knees are where they are in relation to our legs. Our elbows are where they are in relation to our arms. That cannot be altered. She has a long upper and short lower leg due to the structure of the creature. If you could find a suit to match all the criteria, you could not find a person that could fit in it.
Right.
One of the main things, our head. We get to our eyebrow and it goes straight up. Their head, when it gets to the eyebrow, it goes back. You make a mask of their head, you couldn't fit it on a human face. It would not fit.
Right.
The usual trick there is to make it bigger. But if you do that, now the eyes are out of sync. And it's not in relationship to other things. It's just every time you change something, you make it more untenable. Somebody says, well, you can use arm extensions to get that longer arm. No, you can't, because arm extensions extend only the lower half. In order for me to go from my ratio of 72 from my arm length to my leg length to the 84 that they exhibit, you'd have to add 4 inches to my arm. The only way to do that and not have my elbow be out of place would be to add 2 inches below my elbow and 2 inches above my elbow. And I'm not about to allow that to happen, because the only way to do that is surgically, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
You know, the sad thing is, just continue that, but the sad thing is that some so-called experts or whatever, they go with the extent of their pondering the mystery and looking into it is, well, Sasquatch doesn't exist, so it's got to be a guy in a suit, and that's as far as they go. And yeah, but they're taken as experts, right?
Bob and Roger, when they first had the film, offered it to any university to study. The response was, Sasquatch is a myth. Therefore, any movie purporting to show a Sasquatch must be a myth as well.
Right.
Right. That was the attitude. Yeah.
Exactly. And still is today. And in some circles, for sure. So I'm
Well,
sorry for
look,
interrupting you.
look at,
So go ahead.
yeah, look at Jeff Meldrum. I mean, they're after his tenure all the time. He has to be very careful of what he says because they're trying to get him fired all the time because of his stance on Sasquatch. And you know, that's really wide open thinking by professors, right?
It's
Analysis of the musculature of the creature by Dr. Andrew Nelson and John Chambers leads them to the conclude that the creature in the film is not a fake or a hoax. Analysis of the size and compliant gait of the being in the film by Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Scott Lind, Bill Munns, Ruben Steindorf, and Joe Russo lead them to state that the height of the being in the film is between 7 and 8 feet tall, and that it walks with a gait that cannot be duplicated even by an athlete. Analysis of the costume itself by Peter Brook, John Chambers, and Bill Munns, all very well known in the costuming world, and all are award winners for their work, conclude that the material needed to produce an effective costume of this type to be necessary for that film did not exist in the 1960s, and even if they had been, no human being could be physically able to fit in it and perform in it. It is very important here to note that if only one of these 4 conclusions is true, the film cannot be a hoax. It has to be real. The fact that all 4 are true only increase the strength of all the truth of the hypotheses that it is indeed a film of a Sasquatch.
You're right.
Very important to understand that. Let's look at 7 just logical questions here. Now, Bob and Roger lived in Yakima, Washington. This film was done in Northern California. They have the Cascade Mountains in their backyard, the Blue Mountains in their front yards, both of which are Sasquatch-rich areas. Yet they go to California. And Murphy's Law of remote location says the further you are from home, the higher the odds you've forgotten something essential. Okay? And the corollary to Murphy's Law, the further you are from home, the higher the odds that what you've forgotten is not available locally.
Right.
You know?
Well,
And
that fact alone.
yeah,
If you're gonna fake a film, you are not gonna go whatever
600
a
miles
thousand
away from
miles or
home.
whatever
Yeah.
it was to
Yeah.
do it. You're just gonna
Yeah.
do it in an ideal place like right
That's
where
right.
you live because
If
you
they-
have
if they'd
everything
driven-
there.
If you'd have driven up into the Cascade Mountains on some obscure logging road, made the film there, nobody would have ever known. It would have made no difference, and they'd have been home for dinner.
Right.
You know,
And no one's gonna
Yeah.
and no one is going to do that. That
Yeah.
alone is extremely compelling.
That's right. Why would you spend 3 weeks waiting to film your hoax? Spend all day riding horseback, all night driving the roads in a truck. You're camping in a totally undeveloped campground and trying to tend your stock and just keep life running. Why would you do that?
Yeah. Makes no
Why
sense.
would you use the tag end of a roll of film? 76 feet of that 100-foot roll of film, Roger had shot just filming Bob riding along, leading the pack horse, and filming the scenery they were in. There was only 24 feet left on the roll to shoot the hoax. And it makes the identification of the site where they did it irrefutable, but it does nothing to create the film of it. You know?
Right.
Why would you choose a film site 3.5 miles up a creek from the nearest road? Only accessible by foot or on horseback. Remember Murphy's Law. It compounds exponentially when you're remote from a remote spot. Something is bound to go wrong.
Yeah.
Why would you film next to a noisy creek? How would you communicate with your actor? The banks are tricky. Even Roger fell down. He fell down. He didn't even know whether his camera was working. Okay. He fell in a creek. All communications has got to be by hand signal. And it's necessary to navigate across rough ground across the creek and water. And why would you film the entire scene from behind? You have zero communication now with your actor, zero control of route and speed, zero ability to adjust anything in process, and the photographer is constantly chasing the actor to get the scene.
Yeah.
It says, in a costume suit, the back is the worst part to make look right. No one films a suit from the rear if he has a choice in the matter. And that's straight from Bill Munns. Why would you only shoot one take? You know you ran out of film. You know you fell at the creek, and you do not know if your camera even works subsequently. You've driven 600 miles from home with 3 men and 3 horses. Does any of this make any sense to anyone?
Not me.
No. Again, let's review those. Why travel over 600 miles from home? Spend 3 weeks waiting to film it. Use the last 24 feet on a 100-foot roll of film. Choose a site 3.5 miles off the road up a creek. And choose to film next to a noisy creek and film the entire scene from behind and shoot only one take. It's just, if any one of these were is enough to create the doubt of a hoax, but putting all 7 together just really puts a nail in the hoax coffin as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
You remember Bob Heironimus? He said, I'm the guy in the suit, huh? He says, I drove down to Orleans and we drove about 4 or 5 miles up Bluff Creek Road. It was 23 miles. I put on the suit, walked across the gravel bar while Roger filmed it. Then I took off the suit and drove home. We took only one shot. The suit was made from the hide of a red horse, later changed to a black horse. It was a 2-piece suit. Bottom was on fishing waders and the top was pulled on over the top of my head. And I wore football pads to beef it up. And here's the clincher. Roger owed me money and everybody else made money off this, so I should too. You see, he didn't come out with this until that fellow wrote the book, The Making of Sasquatch. And he told Heironimus he'd be a millionaire if he went along with this. Then all of a sudden he was a person in a suit.
You know, it's interesting because my sister's a pretty open-minded person. And she knows I have an interest in Sasquatch, obviously. But she happened to see a show on Bob Heironimus saying he was in the suit. And as far as she was concerned, that was the end of it. You know, like, well, they already proved that there was a guy in the suit. So, you know.
That's what happens. Somebody comes on and makes a statement like that. Oh, that proves it. Yeah, yeah. And they never look at the facts. They never look at the source. You know, and that's happened so many times. But take a look at Patty. I like frame 72. It's from the rear. And you can see her in full length. And you can see the line down her spine down her back and her buttocks. And her arm and comes down past her buttocks onto her leg. And I want you to take a look at that and show me the ham where it was pulled over the top of the fishing waders. That'd have to be pretty evident, wouldn't it? If it just draped down there.
Yeah.
Show me the football pads in that. And do you think anybody would drive 14 hours from their home, get out of the car, put on a suit, walk across the thing, take the suit off, get back in their car and drive 14 hours home?
Well, I'm pretty crazy. I might do that, but I'm just joking. There's not a person, and nobody would do that.
No, nobody's gonna drive 28 hours.
No.
No, it's just not gonna happen. And you look at him in that suit that he was supposed to have worn, the thing has more folds in it than the fat man's chin. You know, it does. And another thing, the lift of the leg. There's 23 degrees difference in how high his foot lifts off the ground and how high Patty's lifts off the ground. Very simple, but it's a scientific, measurable fact. They walk with a much higher degree of angles, 50 some degrees. We walk with 20 some degrees.
Yeah.
Okay. Very, very measurable, very repeatable. Okay. The main thing that I want to talk about here about reproducible evidence is something called intermembral index. And I referred to it when I talked about arm length and leg length. But your intermembral index is a ratio of your arm length to your leg length. And this is an item taught in first year anatomy classes in every university that teaches anatomy. And all primates have a different intermembral index, and it stays uniform. Our intermembral index is 72. Okay. Our arms are 72% of the length of our legs. Now, does this mean everybody, if you divide the leg length measured from hip socket to ankle into the arm length to wrist, is going to be exactly 72? No, it doesn't. That's going to put it in the center of the bell curve. There's going to be natural variations between people. But if you take us at 72, gorillas at 122, their arm is way longer than their legs. Chimpanzees at 105, their arm is just barely longer than their legs. And Sasquatch is 84. Okay. Now, how does that help us? Take a picture that's, on the internet. Here's a picture of a Sasquatch. If you can see the arm and the leg, test that. Measure the arm length from shoulder to wrist, leg length from hip to ankle, and divide the leg length into the arm length times 100, and that's your intermembral index. Some examples: the Independence Day footage, where the Sasquatch is behind the rocks, stops and picks up a baby and then walks on. Intermembral index is 84. The Marble Mountain footage, where he's up on the ridge top screaming at the Boy Scouts,
Yeah.
84. Okay. Tom Seawood's video or picture, 72. And UTV's pictures, 72. Ivan Mark's pictures, 72. They're all fake. And to be blunt, the fellow up in your fellow countryman up there,
Hot standing?
yeah. Some of them are 84, a lot of them are 72. Yeah. And yeah. Now,
So he's got some good stuff, and then he's got some hoaxes.
that's right. That's exactly right. This is a very important figure because it is reproducible, scientific, measurable evidence of the truth of the Patterson-Gimlin film. Why? Because when I did the intermembral index on Patty, her arm length scaled at 1.65250 in the photograph I used, while her leg scaled at 1.82051. Check, make sure I got, this is very slightly written. Arm length is 1.6250, leg length is 1.9375. Okay, if you divide 1.6250 by 1.9375, that comes out to 0.84 times 100 is 84.
Yeah.
So her
Yeah.
intermembral index is 84. Makes her a
And,
Sasquatch.
and for the non-scientific mind, you simply try to superimpose a human figure into the Patty figure, and nothing, the knees, the
Nothing
elbows, that nothing lines up.
That's right.
Nothing lines up even remotely close to a human being.
Bill Munns has a very good treatise on this, on his Bill Munns reports on YouTube. It's a 4-part series he's done there. Very good on the Patterson-Gimlin film. He follows it all the way through, and it's just very, very well done. Part 3A, I believe it is, goes into this fact. He uses a female figure and aligns her the same as Patty in one frame he uses, and I think he uses 354. Yeah, and he shows what happens if you align. You make this Patty figure bigger so that the head will fit and the eyes go out of line. It's just, you can't do it.
No.
And that's what leads him to think, even if you could make a suit that had all the criteria that the Patty suit would have had to have had, you can't find a human being that'll fit in it.
No, if you put Shaq O'Neal in that suit, it would be the same. And nothing would line up.
Exactly. You're exactly right. So now what do you have? You have irrefutable, measurable, reproducible scientific proof that Patty is not a human.
Right.
But a being we call Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Simultaneously, by proving that, you're proving that she's a Sasquatch and not a human in a suit, proves the existence of Sasquatch.
That would be a logical conclusion I would come up with.
Yeah. If she's not human but a Sasquatch, that means Sasquatch have to exist, right?
Not that you and I and many other people who actually have connections with them need that kind of proof, but
No.
but it's very nice, for people who to know, obviously.
And it's nice to have when somebody attacks them, say, here, what's this?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, people always say, sorry, Tom. People always say, follow the science. If they're trying to prove a point that they believe in, but when you throw that science at them, suddenly the science doesn't. The science is immaterial or whatever. Which it doesn't work that way. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. It's not like you conveniently believe this, so you'll follow the science on this, but follow the science is right across the board. And if you follow the science on what you've been talking about and what is a known fact, and all the experts who have actually delved into it have looked at, there's no other conclusion to come up with.
That's right. It absolutely becomes irrefutable that they exist, and it becomes irrefutable that the Patterson-Gimlin film is real. Don't box yourself in, keep an open mind on everything. I've learned I've only been doing this 66 years.
Is that all?
If anybody thinks it,
you're not very dedicated, are you?
if anybody thinks I'd have stuck around doing this for 66 years, if I hadn't had positive results along the line.
And especially with all the ridicule and everything you've gotten along the
Absolutely.
way, why would anybody subject themselves to that, right?
Oh, and I still get it. It's not as bad, and I've learned to handle it just, without calling them an idiot.
Yeah.
I just go, I give them that basically what we talked about today. This is intermembral index, and this is a scientific principle, and this is what it is on that figure. This is what it is on us.
Yeah.
Refute that. Argue with that. Oh,
And
well, what about this picture over here? That had nothing to do with it. We're talking about this. My brother-in-law
well,
said, well, yeah, I know your brother-in-law. So what's your point?
well, the thing is that, if only one of these films or pictures is real, then they have to exist. And the evidence and the work that has been done on the Patterson film, in my mind, proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's not 99.999. It's 100%. There's
never been more film more scrutinized than that film.
and the more they scrutinize it, the more it becomes real.
That's the fact. The more they try to disprove it, all they do is tend to prove it. A few years ago, BBC, we're gonna do the expose of the lifetime to disprove it. They spent thousands of dollars on a suit. And I've got a picture of the Patty.
Yeah.
And the differences are so obvious. Again, when the figure in the suit looks back, his head just spins right over the top of the shoulder, and he looks back. His arm length and his leg length are 72. Okay.
Yeah. What was their conclusion when they did that? Did they realize that, this is not what we think?
BBC, after they saw it, after it aired, said that didn't prove anything. If anything, it proved the film. Yeah,
Right.
They came out and denied that it showed anything to do with Patty.
Right.
It was so obvious.
Yeah.
And everybody else has done the same thing. Leroy Blevins did the same thing, and his leg lift, and his arm length versus leg length, and that neck length just kills any attempt to fake it. It just absolutely kills it.
Yeah.
We can't do anything about our neck length. I don't know of anybody that wants their neck cut off and spliced down further on their shoulder. And that's
Not
what's
unless
happening with her.
not unless you're in a medieval thing with the guillotine or whatever, your neck length's
Right.
gonna be about the standard.
I mean, I played football with shoulder pads on, and I could still look over my shoulder on both sides with shoulder pads on.
Yeah.
So like I said, they have the same 7 vertebrae we have, but so do giraffes. And it's just a matter of size of those vertebrae.
Right. Is there any more on this presentation that we haven't covered yet?
I've covered everything I want to cover, except for one thing. Then I've learned this over the years. When you get into a discussion like this, don't raise your voice. Just strengthen your argument. And that, I think, is what we've done here. We've given people a strong argument if they will learn this intermembral index concept. All of the other is nice dressing on the cake, but this is reproducible, measurable evidence. Okay.
And another compelling thing for me anyway is I got a pretty good bullshit detector. Always did, but the Sasquatch, because they work with people through energy or whatever, you can just look at somebody and know what they're about, kind of thing. And anybody who meets Bob Gimlin, this guy is the most sincere, honest, kind, generous man you could ever meet. Has the time for everybody he talks to, and this guy's not lying. Why would he subject himself to that? I mean, if you
in
think
his
you got it,
family.
if you think you got it bad, he probably got it worse than you, you
Oh,
know?
much worse than me. His whole family was subjected to it. Paul Freeman, same thing with the Paul Freeman film. His
Which is a
family
very
just
important
did,
film, which is a very important
yeah,
film, and
yeah,
it doesn't get the credit it deserves, but it's probably number
no,
two.
it is number two. Next to
Yeah.
Patty, it's the best ever. Yeah. Then and people who do hoaxes, just to me, they're reprehensible. They're making fun of something they don't understand at all, and
Yeah.
they're denigrating other people. You know, Bob's 100% cowboy now, and all the good portions of that word.
Yeah.
Okay, 150 years ago, if somebody had said something to him that people have said now, they'd have gotten shot. A cowboy's words is bond, and
Yeah.
you did not denigrate a cowboy's word. You did not question his word. If he said something, it was truth. And virtually I'm the same way. You know, I've spent 60 years researching this. If I got caught in one lie, there's 66 years gone out the window. Because
Right.
what people don't understand is you get caught lying once, that makes everything you've ever said suspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because,
Yeah.
you know, if a person will do it once, they'll do it again. You know, and so it's very, very important that we maintain our integrity. And Bob's wife worked at a bank, and they were just absolutely assaulted with insults and everything because of that film. And
Yeah.
number two, Bob never got anything out of that film. Roger made some money, and Roger's brother-in-law made a lot of money, L.D. Atley. But Bob never, he sold his rights to it to Renee Danon for $10. Yeah, yeah,
I
he,
remember
he,
that because when I met Rennie Delhinden, he owned the Canadian rights to that film.
yeah,
And
mhm,
and
yeah,
one thing for people to understand and take note of is that if you don't respect the Sasquatch, they're not going to show you anything. And
that's right.
unfortunately, Rennie Delhinden was a bitter man. I met him, and he was saying,
Hmm.
"I don't even know if the damn thing exists." And he spent
Hmm.
like his whole life, including losing a marriage and everything, trying to
Yeah,
pursue it. But they never gave him anything because he didn't have they weren't interested in him and as far as his attitude, and he didn't have the right heart and the right way of and the right respect, put it that way.
and John Green same way. You know, John had a totally misunderstood idea of what they were, and they wouldn't give themselves up to him. Uh,
Yeah.
Bob Titmus, they did, but Bob worked very diligently to get there. That
But yeah,
situation.
but in support of John Green, he was a nice man,
Yep.
and his stories, like the Ruby Creek
Hmm.
story, and some and the one of the Albert Ottman,
Hmm.
those stories are timeless.
Yes, he was a great chronicler.
Those stories are timeless, and
Yeah.
he played a very important part in
Hmm.
the Sasquatch phenomena. And actually, some of the things that he said or that he wrote down that Ottman said, if you read that account, there's things in there that we know now from experience of knowing the Sasquatch people or whatever
Right.
that they had no idea of at that time, and
At that
you can
time.
tell how legitimate that story is.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And he was one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life.
Yeah,
Uh, he was just, you know, they used him to chronicle it, but they, you know, with me, they showed themselves to me, then asked me to be their chronicler. And
yeah,
that's why I've written, published 16 books now.
and
Uh,
kind of similar to me too.
Yes.
you know,
Oh,
when I
yeah.
speak with them or whatever.
Look what
They
we,
chose me, right?
yeah,
What's
but
that?
look what we went through to get you there.
Todd, you keep
Get
him
him
under
on.
control.
Yeah. Melted the wax out of my ears.
Well, I'll tell you though, I think that we mended that was just like
That was learning how to
just a
approach
learning
things.
experience, but I think
Yeah,
we definitely mended the fences because
sure,
the
absolutely.
love that clan has given me and the knowledge and the knowing and the
Hmm.
downloads, whatever, all that stuff is just like beyond words and so precious that
Why do you
yeah,
why
it's
do you
just,
think it became not necessary for me to come up there all the time?
yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
you're already on your own, and yeah,
So,
that's what it was all about.
I wanted to ask you, and Ari's quite the guy, as we both know.
Hmm.
I'm getting emotional just talking about him because,
Hmm.
but anyway, what are some of the interesting things over the years that Bob has told you about the experience that maybe some people don't know as well or whatever? What are some of the intriguing things that he's told you about that day?
Well, yeah. First of all, he left camp before Roger did, because Roger slept in, and he was up at first light. But he only came back to camp that day when he did, because he had a shoe come loose on his horse. And he came back to tighten the shoe, and then Roger was up then, and they went uh up the creek, 3.5 miles from Notice Creek where they're camped. And Bob was headed home, and Roger asked him to stay through the weekend, and they'd go up to this particular area where there was really good habitat. That's how they happened to run into her. They were leaving the next day, and and yeah, that's number one. Number two was the getting out of there. It was the next day after they got the film, they cast the tracks, went to town to talk to Al Hodgson, came back. Next morning they got up, and it was just starting to rain a little bit. By the time Bob got camp moved around a little bit, it was pouring, and those roads up there are not graveled. Okay, most of them were brand new anyway, but then they were just open dirt. So you can imagine what heavy rains did to them, and they just barely got out of there.
Yeah.
At one point, he had to borrow a backhoe from construction crew to pull the truck up the hill. They'd slid off the side of the road, this 1-ton truck with stock racks on it and 3 horses in it, and they couldn't get up the mountain on their own. Yeah, there's a lot of things that went on there that people don't understand,
Yeah.
that never heard about. Uh, I wrote about that in 21 Days to Destiny,
Yeah.
the story of Bluff Creek, and told that story.
Didn't
But
Bob
yeah,
think,
that's a
sorry, didn't Bob, when I was talking to him, he right from the beginning thought it was more, I'm not gonna say it. Patty was more human than Ape.
yeah,
He had a pretty good inkling right off the bat that he was looking at
yeah,
some kind of a
absolutely,
human.
absolutely. He knew he wasn't looking at an animal. So when she looked back at him, looked right in his eyes, he said, "I wasn't looking at an animal." So I knew
Did
what
he
she meant.
describe the feeling you got when they locked eyes?
Yeah, but I don't want to get into that. Okay,
Well, can
because
you just give
that's
us like
kind
just the like the
of a
just
very
like a
strong
really
feeling. Yeah.
short version? He knew there was some
See,
intelligence there.
yeah, you have to remember this. Prior to this time, he'd never even seen a track that would tell him that they were real.
Right.
She was his absolute first experience at knowing that they were real.
Right.
And yeah, because Bob just went along because he loved to ride.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sure, I'll go along. I could just
Yeah, yeah. But he rode the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
Well,
he stopped, his wife and kids were to meet him in one place for give him some more new supplies. They didn't even recognize him.
yeah,
He'd been 2 weeks on the trail and he didn't even recognize him.
yeah. I wanted to make a couple points that I know that you agree with, and one is a real thorn in your side too, so we can discuss that a little bit. But I personally believe, and I know from talking to you that you do, that, Sasquatch are reaching out to us. They're reaching out to certain people because they have a message they want people to know, and it's a message for humanity. And I've gotten into a lot of that in my videos and stuff on my YouTube channel, so we won't go into too much detail there. But the thing is that I believe that meeting was a setup, that they wanted that to happen. And I'm getting chills when I say that. I'm getting my normal energy confirmation. First time in the show, but I got it. But anyway, they wanted to get into our consciousness, and that film is exactly what brought Sasquatch back into people's consciousness. Because before that, it was just like Indian legends and a few stories around Harrison Hot Springs and different places. But it turned it into, from a myth to something that, hey, this could be real. So that film catapulted into exactly where we are now with our understanding of it. It was the catalyst and it was the introduction. And I 100% believe that it was set up by the Sasquatch people because it was time. And, also this massacre theory bullshit. I'm sorry for using my French there, Tom, but that nonsense. You watch Patty walking away. She's not walking away from people who just massacred her whole family or whatever. She's very deliberate. She's not scared. She looks back. It was like, I'm going to give you what you need and go.
I'll put a nail in the coffin of massacre theory very easily. It's based on two things. She had a wound on her leg in one of the films, and there was a flare that M.K. Davis assumed was a flare of a rifle. Okay, for a shot. Okay, Bill Munns in his worked with the film, a first generation copy at Patricia Patterson's home. Neither of those appear in the first generation copy. They're the result of copies of copies of copies of copies of copies, and it introduced these artifacts into them. They don't exist in the original film.
No, and the same thing with the blood apparently in the creek. It was just overexposure or something.
Well, I mean, look at the picture of the area. I mean, you've got it's fall, it's October, everything is red. They've got the foliage they have there is all red. The poison oak, even the trees growing on that sandbar were alder. That's red alder. And they'd all been beaten to death a couple of years before in the flood, and they bled into the water. Yeah, so there was a reflection of red on the water. That doesn't make it blood. Just makes it a reflection of the red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other point is that from my experience with Sasquatch or whatever, they're very elusive. They'll only show themselves to you when they want to. And they're also more evolved than us in many, many ways, with the cloaking and all the abilities that they have. And I'm not saying that all Sasquatch have those abilities, but for me to believe, from what I've experienced, that somebody could go in there and wipe out a whole family of them is like, that's ridiculous. No, that's not going to happen.
I've heard 9, well, how are you going to do that? The rifle that Bob had only held 5 shots. So when he's standing there reloading, what are they going to do? Stand around waiting to be shot?
Yeah.
It just makes no sense.
You know, it makes absolutely no sense
Yeah.
whatsoever. Unless somebody believes they're just a dumb ape running around in the woods and they
Not,
got
not,
lucky, but that's
not,
not the
not,
case.
not only that, but they'd spend 50 years trying to get film of one. Why would there all at once be 9 there, you know?
What is the actual, you know, it's a ridiculous story, we know. But what is the actual story that how many did they say that they massacred?
9, up to 9. It
Oh my
varies
God.
depending on,
That's
yeah.
no, no.
And what do they do with the
That-
bodies, you know? If,
yeah, I
in,
mean, you know what a body would be worth?
especially in 19,
You know how much
when
a
there was
body would be
no,
worth?
oh, yeah.
If you
And
got a body,
especially
why are you not gonna show it?
to somebody doing a documentary on them, what would that body be worth? You know, it's just literally, yeah. The whole hoax story is just that, a hoax.
Because let's face it,
Uh,
I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I didn't know Roger Patterson, but he was an entrepreneur,
yeah,
whatever. I don't think he was a bad man or whatever. I mean,
no, you
I'm
have
not
to,
saying, hold on a sec. I'm not saying he's not capable of doing that. I don't think he would be. But the fact that he was an entrepreneur and trying to promote himself and all that, the fact that he would kill a Sasquatch and not produce a body is ridiculous.
yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. You gotta remember, Roger was in remission from cancer. Matter of
Right.
fact, it came back, and that's what he died in 1972. So, you know, you got to grant him a little slack for getting around. And I'll tell you, so it was a funny story there. He had a little horse. Of course, Roger and Bob are both smaller men. Uh, they're not like me. They don't need a 16-hand horse, 17-hand horse to keep your boots from dragging out on the ground. And Roger's little horse, he had a Volkswagen bus, and he'd take his horse with him in that bus. The horse was
Yeah.
small enough to fit in that bus, and he'd load him up. And that's another point. When they were in California, one of the horses that they had was Bob Heironimus's horse. It was an ex-roping horse. Bob's a nice little horse, good little horse. Uh, you know, so, and Hieronymus had done work for Roger in this filming, and you know, he, like I said, he was making a documentary. That's what he was there for. And so, and then all of a sudden, you know, it was what, 78. 11 years later, he comes up with the idea he was the person in the suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How tall is Bob Heironimus?
6'1".
Yeah, he wasn't 7 foot something, was he?
No, no,
Well,
no. I've seen
there we
him.
go. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never met him, but I've seen him.
Is there anything you
Yeah.
want to add, Tom? Because I think we did a really nice
I
presentation here, very compelling, and
yeah, I want people to understand that if they don't have this, they at least have this to fall back on. And you can get that from my website or from uh, Amazon.com.
yeah.
And it's also available in on Kindle. So any way that you want to get it, you
Yeah.
can get it. It's been a very good selling. Oh, the cover. I want to talk about that. That's for me by my friend Dennis Day. Uh, uh, and
Not
that's
the
kind of
guy, not Jack Benny's friend, right?
not Jake Benny's Dennis Day. No, he's a little younger than that, but that's
By the way, nobody who's listening to this knows that has any idea what we're talking
and
about,
who
probably, because
Dennis Day
nobody's as
was.
old as us, right?
And that's a fact. But Dennis had that picture at a conference in North Cascades a couple of years ago, and I tried to buy it off of him, the picture, you know, because I wanted it for the cover of this book. And now he didn't want to sell it. He didn't want to, he was just showing it. But he gave me permission to use it on the cover. And then later that fall, I get a message from him, send me your address. I got something to send you. I was okay, and I did. A week or so later, that shows up in the mail, the original artwork on the original painting. just gave it to me. What a
Yeah,
cool guy.
beautiful. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just
Yeah.
wanted to say that if anybody wants to meet Sasquatch, there's and you have many different ways, but one of your ways and is just pull up a chair by the side of the woods, pull out a bucket of chicken or whatever, read a good book, and just wait for them to get curious and come
That's
around.
that's it. That's it.
And the other and
I
the other
learned that
thing
many
is
years
that
ago.
and the other thing is that I told everybody who wants to introduce themselves to Sasquatch, just be open-hearted and say, "Hi, I'm Brian. I respect you, blah blah blah, and I would
And
like to meet you." And
always made,
just say it with an open. I got another big energy confirmation.
yeah,
Just say it honestly. Don't have an agenda. Don't care about taking pictures of them or anything like that. Although I do, the glyphs is a different thing because I that was a teaching tool.
yeah,
But have
yeah.
your pursuit is just you want to have a relationship with them and open
That's right.
and open heart.
That's right. Just hi, my name's Tom. I'd sure like to meet and talk to you, if you have time.
That's
And
right.
they get curious. They want to know why you're there. And like I say, a a couple of fried chicken hips and Diet Pepsi and boiled eggs and my Kindle, and
Yeah.
I was in heaven, and
Yeah.
just sit there and wait. And I learned that from back when I was a forester, and I'd hike in so far, 5, 6, 7 miles to do a bridge site survey. And the last thing you want to do is hike back out and then sit down that evening to do your drawing and find out you've forgotten the measurement and have to hike back in the next day. And
Yeah.
right where I was and make sure, do a quick drawing, make sure I had all the measurements I needed before I left. And they'd sneak in and wonder why I was sitting. I mean, I'd be 7 miles back into old growth timber. Nobody had been there in 500 years. And so what's he doing sitting there?
Yeah.
And yeah,
You
so
know, one thing though is, from my experience and whatever, that's a valid point that they get curious or whatever. But as
mhm,
far as, them knowing you're there, well, in all
mhm,
honesty, they're gonna know what you're gonna do and what you're thinking before you even formulate the thought. So,
yeah,
it's a way deeper than
they,
that, but there is some validity to it. So I wanted
yeah.
to ask you one more thing. We'll wrap it up. But why don't you tell us the mushroom picking story? Would you like to
Oh
end with that
yeah,
when you observe them? Why don't you end with
sure.
that and it'll be a perfect little wrap?
Yeah, we this happened in the early 70s. Um, my best friend and I, it was September, grouse season had just opened, and it was hot. It had been hot, and my logging company had been shut down for fire danger, and so we decided go um, to go grouse hunting. And of course, in those times, grouse hunting meant that was a euphemism for being in the woods when the elk were bugling. Because if you've never been in the woods when the elk are bugling, you don't know what you're missing. It is absolutely one of the most fantastic things that you can ever do. So we took off out in the west end of Voisin's Olympic Peninsula and spotted a herd of elk. There was about 100 elk in that herd. And when they're in a herd like that, you can get right in amongst them and walk with them. Uh, you can reach out, touch a cow on this side or reach out on that side. You're that close to them. Just walk along with them. They'll bark at you, and just bark right back at them, and they'll walk along until we got up to the corner, and there's a clear cut, and they'd either have to go out in the open or and about half of them decided to come back by us. He disappeared. He's gone. And so that kind of busted it up. We looked up, there's a big 5 point bull, it was a herd bull, and he was up on a point in the clear cut, just screaming his head off, trying to get his cows back together after we busted them up. And he was not a happy camper. Young Spike walked up beside him and he just lowered his rack and sent him rolling down the hill. And so we decided we'd probably push them far enough and turned around. Of course, we were not together by that. We were both foresters, so it didn't really make any difference. We both knew how to get back where we started, no matter where we were. And so I was hiking back through the timber, and I noticed a clearing ahead of me. And that usually means a water hole. And so I wanted to sneak up on it, see if there's anything around the water hole. And there's a great big spruce tree. And I peeked around it. There were two bear feeding, and there wasn't a water hole. It was about 6 acres of blown down timber. And they had oyster mushrooms growing on them. And those are good. I mean, I envied those bears. Okay. And so I decided to sit there and watch them for a little while. First one of them stood up. Oh, that's no bear. It was a Sasquatch, a big male Sasquatch. Stood up and he looked all around to make sure everything was all right, and then bent back down and started feeding again. Then the female would stand up. And I got to sit there and watch them about between 20 and 30 minutes. I don't know exactly how long it was. But as they fed along, coming towards me, they were probably 30, 35 yards from me. And all of a sudden, I felt a gust of wind hit the back of my neck. I said, oh, busted. And so I just stood up because immediately, I had four eyes just click right on me. And
well, hold on a second, Tom. Just what do you associate with that gust of wind? How did you know you were busted? How did you associate that with the Sasquatch?
Well, I knew when I had the wind at the back of my neck, they could smell me.
Oh, okay, I get you.
The wind was now where it had been from them to me. Now it was from me to them.
Okay,
and
continue.
Yeah, so I had four eyes right on me just instantaneously. And so I just stood up and stepped out from the tree so they could see it was just me. And I said, it's just me. I'm not here to do you any harm. I just watching what you were doing there. And
Beautiful.
as he stepped back, and she reached down and picked up an infant and put it on her chest. He just held on and walked back into the timber. And as he turned to go, I said, thank you for sharing your family with me today. It's been a very great pleasure. And he turned back, and I swear he nodded at me. I mean, I can't prove that, but I swear he nodded at me and then turned back in the timber and left. Yeah. And then I spent the next half hour picking mushrooms myself. And,
but they didn't leave. They left deliberately and not in.
Yeah, not in fear or anything. Just just deliberately.
Yeah.
He let her and the baby go first, and then like I say, he stopped and turned back to acknowledge my speaking to them. And that was just so special. It was, now, like I said, I think that was 73, might have been 74, but it was a long time ago, 50 years ago. Now, can you imagine that 50 years ago? Oh,
yeah,
I'm old.
Well, I'm going to be 70 in October, so.
Oh, you young whippersnapper.
I feel pretty good though. Feel pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think we did a really good presentation. I think anybody who listens to it is gonna.
I hope so.
I mean, the stuff you presented, especially on the evidence, is irrefutable, and compelling and very well put together and very well presented. And I just wanted to thank you for your immeasurable contribution to Sasquatch and introducing them to people for 60 plus years, because no matter what anybody says, you're one of the people who is really representative in an honest, compelling, dedicated way, and I know they're grateful, and I know that I'm grateful for how you've helped me, and just want to thank you from them and from me. And boy, oh boy, are we just
thank you.
He's got me crying now. He just wow, he just checked in.
Me too.
Wow. Oh my God.
Oh, thank
Sorry,
you,
I'm not usually a crybaby. Well, I am pretty sentimental about the Maple Leafs, that, but when it comes to this, we know that. Tom, about me and the Maple Leafs, but I'll tell you, when it comes to the Sasquatch, they can have me in tears instantly. And
Yeah.
what
Well,
I just
5
told
years.
you, what I just told you, Ari, he's behind that statement 100%. So thank you very
Mhm.
much, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's been such a wonderful ride. Arla, Sue, you, just the people, Barb. No,
Stinkberg. Oh,
Barb.
wait a minute. No,
Oh, I can't.
I'm
I
just
can't
joking.
even.
No,
I
let's not
can't
even
even.
mention or put any negativity. That was a joke. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I know.
but
Yeah, just the people, Randy. It's just these people that have come into my life. It's just unreal. Just I don't even want to get started there because there's so many, and I'll leave somebody out on that deserve to be there. But it's just been such a wonderful, wonderful time. And
yeah,
dealing with these people, with these big, hairy people, and learning about them, learning their, what they are and who they are, has just been just so overwhelming. And it's hard to talk. Let's stop this now. And thank you for
yeah,
this opportunity, Brian.
yeah. We did really
Yeah,
good.
this is
And I would,
important.
it is. And I would say that, as far as trust and whatever goes, when I'm in the woods, they've rescued me out of there before, and I trust them explicitly. And I'd rather be having them around me than a lot of people when I'm out, in that
When I
environment.
One thing I want to say beyond that, they're the reason I'm still alive today.
Yeah,
They have saved my
absolutely.
life so many times, but that's another story. But yeah, they have saved my life literally on multiple occasions.
Well, when I had my heart problem, they
Hmm.
showed me without question. And
Hmm.
I won't get into the details. It's in my book or whatever.
Hmm.
So if anyone is interested, they can read it there. But they show me without question that they were with
Hmm.
me, helped me through it. So
Yeah,
that's just the kind of loving friends that they are.
they are. They are all of that and then some.
Yeah.
Thank you, and have a wonderful time, especially on your new place up there. Um,
Thank you.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm envious of you there. I wish I was 30 years younger and there with you. Okay, you take care and
Thanks, Tom, and
goodbye.
thank you for everybody for watching. And I just want to say, have an open mind and listen to what Tom says. He's speaking the truth, and the Sasquatch people, they like it when you hear and when you understand,
All
and
right.
approach them with a kind, gentle heart. And thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.